All right. All right. We got a crowd here. So some huge news just came in. So on Telegram, somebody was asking specifically about this little thing. So a couple of years ago, they posted this infographic, Constellation did, about the contract that they had with the Department of Defense. And there was certain milestones that needed to be met. And, it's kind of a funny little infographic here. Um, it's got different milestones that needed to be met, and here you got the Department of Defense. Blockchain is interesting, and then oh shit, blockchain is mission critical. And then so here's the different milestones that needed to be met. So just today somebody asked the question of where Constellation was at with these specific milestones. And so co-founder and CSO Benjamin Diggles jumped in and he said, yes, we've completed all those milestones, and we're working on the product transition, which will carry over into 2025 with our current contract, Platform One. And for those of you that have been following along in my Telegram, where I've been sort of peeling back the layers of the onion for everybody, I've actually talked about Platform One several times. Platform One is a big deal. I mean, this is like the gateway to the DoD. It's a platform that allows users to deploy the DevSpecOps software factory. And so this is like the gateway for all contractors. And so DevSpecOps, for those of you who don't know, this stands for Development, Security, and Operations. And one thing that's kind of interesting is, so that here's some of the different deployables. I'll see if I can pull up the Telegram spot where he talked about Party Bus specifically. But what's interesting here is if you look at the Party Bus, and it's an environment services needed for development and deployment of your software application. And so this sort of aligns like with Iron Spider. But one thing that's interesting to note is here. Who do you see here? You see Mattermost. And for those of you that have been following along, know Mattermost is part of Iron Spider. And so this could be, the component here that's where Constellation fits in. So it'll be part of this Party Bus. And Mattermost isn't just, some just random company. They've been working with mission critical workflow for a while. But the one thing that I wanted to point out and emphasize when it was first revealed that Mattermost was part of Iron Spider was look at the people that they're already working with. I mean, yes, this makes sense. NASA, Constellation is also working with NASA via the DigiFoundry. Air Force, they're working with the Air Force in lots of ways, which we've already talked about. But Qualcomm and Samsung, like this could be like the gateway here to to having a secure solution on enterprise level. Yeah, and so this to me is a big deal. Yeah, and so with me, I got Court Welty from Intrana, and some of the other big news that happened last week was the National DigiFoundry was at the Global Blockchain Association event there, and there was members from the Treasury, the National Science Foundation, and Space Force. And I've put up all those clips. I mean, I could probably put them up again. But what was great was you had on stage, these members talking about a lot of the initiatives with tokenizing assets that is happening right now, like some of the things that they're testing right now as we speak. Some of them was submitting and transmitting healthcare data. The other thing, which sort of blew my mind, was when they said that they are testing cross-border payments, which Court can maybe express a little bit about like what that entails, because he's part of the financial product tokenization working group, and they're building a tokenization engine for all these people.
Yeah, happy to be here. Good to see you, Dagnum. Also, I'd like to say beforehand, Mattermost, they do work with people like HIPAA, but also FINRA, right? Which is where you go through and get all your licensing if you're a broker or an advisor, right? And they work a lot with the SEC. They deal with certain types of like state registration, while the SEC deals with like national registration. But Mattermost is a very big deal in the fact that they're working in association with them. Iron Spider, like that's huge. And then the marketplace in and of itself, Platform One, they have a really cool logo. Smokey. He's really cool. But also, it's a very cool way to integrate at source metagraphs on an enterprise level with people that are very familiar with what it takes to have the best technology in the world to be able to protect data that is mission critical. And it's wow, like I'm blown away. Very proud to be associated with Constellation because they're killing it right now. And to be on that marketplace, to be in association with these types of people, it really does show what type of product they've created and why this network is really, kind of superior. But to kind of speak about the international payments and what that entails or what that could mean, right? Our tokenization engine, for instance, does have a prototype to be able to go and tokenize US dollars in the same way that banks do, but provide sovereign custody of those dollars and other assets, right? But through the association with their testing, I'm not quite familiar with exactly what she's talking about, but it does mean that they're working with other countries or their own banks in other countries to make this happen. And what that means is that we will be able to, at a certain point, country to country, establish standards and then allow for these borderless interactions to take place using things like what we've made at the actual NDF in a way that saves people a lot of money, is more efficient, is much safer, and ensures sovereignty. Because, at a nationwide international level, we really feel like this technology is kind of the cure for communism, so to speak. It's what we need to stop governments, big corporations from overreach, but also be able to, inside of governments and big corporations, provide the highest levels of efficiencies and control artificial intelligence in the way that it should be, because it is a monster and it can get out of control. But if you have validated data sets, if you validate the outcomes of some of these experiments with AI, if you make sure that everything is controlled and token gated with something like a tokenization engine, it makes dealing with AI as it grows larger and larger and more powerful much easier for humans, because at a certain point it's going to be doing things now that we can't do. So some of these work groups, yes, they're made for space or tokenizing financial products, but they all coincide in a way that paints a very bright picture for humanity, kind of the golden era in which things can't be taken from you, and you own what you own and I own what I own, and we can interact with markets, but our data is much safer and we're no longer exposed to data lakes that just sit there that are owned by corporations that aren't necessarily protected by the best policies or encryption methods or networks. And then at the government level, it really does help to have people like the Treasury and IBM, Microsoft, others to provide the support that's necessary for us to be able to do this in a way that's collaborative with not only states but other government agencies, and then hopefully, wink wink, internationally. And this is what they're talking about, is being able to do this in an international way. Those cross-border payments is huge, especially when it comes to being able to support, our allies, them being able to support us, and us being able to hold, the financial systems accountable, including banks, including government banks, including, local banks, in a way that we don't have right now. And from that, we can create these efficiencies that would be able to, actually provide benefit to humanity as opposed to a select few. In the association with the GBA, being at their event, I'm sure there's going to be some news coming out. I'm not sure if I can talk about that yet. But, the GBA is an excellent organization. They have thousands of members across, 100 plus countries. And they have different working groups that have been working on a lot of these different issues, online credit systems, definitely not social credit systems, because that's not a good thing. But some of these other technologies and applications of DLT inside of our pre-existing systems and architectures, so that we can get ready for this quantum computing age. So it's very exciting, and to be selected as a center of excellence is a huge deal. And apologies for the rain. It's kind of storming out here in East Texas.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so Kevin Jackson was in the Telegram a couple of days ago in the federal section of my Telegram group, and he explained that the relationship with the GBA and the National DigiFoundry is, I mean, if correct me if I'm wrong, but it was essentially like they're going to help people like onboard through the process quicker so they can get to the certification level that they need, right? Because there's a lot of people that think that uh, you know, they're credited, but they're not. Like the example that was given at the GBA was, some guy that, was running some sort of smart contract thing under his desk, right? But it actually wasn't the way, because most of the stuff was just being run on his computer and not being run or validated on chain. And so they're going to be working with people to get through the process a little bit quicker. I mean, if that is sort of sums up how I understood how the DigiFoundry was working with them.
Yes. Help on board. Provide some collaborative assistance. There's probably some other news that'll come out. Definitely can't talk about that yet. But the GBA is a great friend of the NDF. That collaboration is going to be very fruitful, and getting our workforce up to speed with some of these new technologies is also a huge challenge that countries are going to face. Because as we start to move forward, these schemas aren't necessarily totally foreign, but the way that we integrate the technology is a new concept. And there is an efficient way and an inefficient way, like you said, to do it. And these inefficiencies, it can sometimes lead to vulnerabilities. And that's why things like Mattermost and others inside of the GBA and other companies that are working with, let's say, the Platform One really provide. It's that new age, quantum computing resistant, efficient manner to create your stack in a way that's not completely ripping everything out, but providing very important, let's say, blocks inside of the infrastructure to protect things. Because, like you said, I mean, running most of the operations inside of, like, let's say, like a database on his laptop or something, or underneath his desk on a PC, is terrible. That's
Yeah.
like one of the worst ideas you could possibly have. And having a terminal, okay, that's fine, but it should be in the cloud. It should be able to operate in an edge sense. You should be validating that information, and you should be integrating things like Constellation in order to be able to do that. Obviously, like, we don't have a 100% solution for storage on chain. Let's say, for instance, we can push as much data as we want on chain to reflect that, but to store the hard data, like for some instances like live streaming, latency is something that has to be done in the cloud right now. But that provides a very cool way to analyze user activity, right? So there's going to be something to be said about, cloud environments, which is why IBM is providing cloud infrastructure. I mean, we even host metagraphs inside of the cloud, right? But then validating the information, it's all about how you create the boxes inside of the boxes, right? Everybody's going to be using the same boxes at the end of the day. They're going to be using the same cloud deployments that are all rather interoperable. But how you protect that data and how you validate it is going to end up making the winners and the losers, because databases are vulnerable. And if there's a vulnerability that's exposed in a library that everybody uses, then everybody's going to get hit by a bot network. And then all of a sudden, if you haven't validated your data or backed it up, people are going to lose it. So in this way, if you just tokenize it, maybe we lose a little bit of privacy. If these hacking tools become better and better, as they have, but there's ways to black box these solutions such that you don't even have to put everything out on a public chain, which is what we're doing with the tokenization of financial products, right? We don't want people to be able to see, your net worth or my net worth or anybody, or what.
Well, it's like attribution, right? That's the value, and all these companies need is data assurance, and that's something that Constellation has proven at scale in contested environments. And so, I mean, it kind of so it brings me to like this point here, which is pretty funny. So like all the crypto bros, they're always like, when is XYZ gonna pump, right? And so it's important to distinguish between like the casino game, which all these memes are, right? And like 99.99% of all these like memes are scams, and they're just exit liquidity. And yes, while you see online all the time about how X token pumped like 1,000%, right? And it seems like a lot. And when the total altcoin market gets to where it was in the last cycle at the all-time high, you're still at little over $1 trillion. And that might sound like a lot, but that's actually nothing. And I made this point earlier today in a post, because here's the top 5 stocks. Each and every single one of these has a total market cap of greater than the entire altcoin market, right? So you're talking about all those tens of thousands of tokens, fucking everything. And Nvidia itself is worth more than that. I mean, Apple's I think Apple generates more yearly income than the total crypto market right now, which is like 800 billion or something like that. So it's laughable, this Web3 stuff. And right now, we're actually seeing the big boys jump in this space. And you've seen a few people talk about it, about trillions of dollars that are going to come online. And that's exactly what's going to happen when these Web 2 boys utilize distributed ledger technology. And we've seen it with Constellation. We saw Common Crawl, which again, I can't underscore that enough to people, like just how massive that is and how massive it is going to be in the future. I made a little joke post the other day about how you can see the problems with AI, and people are just blindly trusting these models, but they have no idea where the source data comes from, or how accurate these models are. Google Gemini, or whatever the hell it's called, it told some student to go kill himself. Like that actually that actually happened. So you have that. And then the other thing that you have is you have Panasonic, like one of the biggest companies globally, that has trusted Constellation's network with its solutions. And I've talked about this many, many, many times. This is gonna pan out more than just the stuff that they've tested with the Department of Defense and those tough books, right? Like that was just a proof of concept, right? And so they've already proven to Panasonic in a contested environment that they can handle sensitive data. And so like if you look at Panasonic themselves, that there's so many different verticals you could go. They have this whole smart home integration, Panasonic does. They have like vehicle integrations. I think I've pointed that out too. A lot of people just aren't aware of that. That they have like heads-up display stuff that are in Hyundais and Hondas, and I believe some other ones. But those two I know for a fact. I've made a post about that. And then also the batteries. Like most of the batteries that are in Teslas are actually Panasonic batteries. And that is a testament to Constellation Network, the fact that you have somebody like Panasonic that said, okay, like we're going all in on this, because we see the value here. And the tokenizing of traditional assets is going. I mean, it's going to open so much liquidity. It's not even going to be funny. I mean, the the move that we're going to see when it happens is going to be biblical. And while people are trying to like distract you with this meme coin super cycle, like I, you're going to get wrecked, and you're going to miss the train. Not the train. You're going to miss the rocket ship that's leaving the planet. Like that's exactly what's going to happen. And it's not just Constellation. I mean, there's plenty of other networks that are all going to be leaving the orbit. You got like Algorand. That's another great company. You got Alchemy, Hedera. I mean, Avalanche. I've talked about Avalanche an awful lot. Because just the way that their network architecture is structured, and they're doing a lot of the same plays. Like their Web3 gaming stuff is going to be huge. They've already tokenized assets. They like with the California Department of DMV. You're talking about your titles of your car are on chain. Like that's just a stepping stone. And when the rubber meets the road, and it's going to happen pretty quick, like some of these things that I've talked about before, specifically like how it's probably going to play out with Constellation Network, just because of of some of the things that they've been doing. I don't know why this isn't loading. But the Department of Transportation has this. Let me share this one instead. I'll go back to this. There we go. So I've talked about this before. So a lot of you guys might not be aware, but Constellation actually co-authored the data sharing standards for all autonomous vehicles. That was back in like 2020 or 2021. But you're free to look this up. This document by the Department of Transportation. So they have this thing called vehicle to everything, and it's like this whole smart grid infrastructure stuff, right? And they've been spending like $100 billion a year, every year on this stuff. And since I think like 2021 or something. But what's interesting here is if you look at the roadmap on this acceleration phase, and let me get back to this roadmap here. 2024, which we're in, right now, and so this short-term goals goes through 2028. So they're talking about infrastructure deployments. They're talking about interoperability, and they're talking about vehicles. And all of these things, like Constellation has already proven to the federal government that they could do. So I think it was over the summer when I pointed this out. So I wouldn't be surprised if we heard something about this in the near term. So it's beyond just the Department of Defense stuff. This is a public infrastructure. This is a public utility. Like this stuff is going to be used whether you like it or not, whether you FUD or not. Like, and when this network is being used as a public infrastructure, things are going to get real, and it's going to get real really quick. And I'd also want to emphasize too that so now it almost seems like we're in this this like arms race, right? This like blockchain arms race with this new administration, and now everybody's trying to get out in front of this like federal application. But Constellation is so far ahead of the game from everybody. I mean, look, they already have a federal metagraph. I mean, they're already deploying and giving back, some of the contracts that they've gotten. There's $50 million in the federal pipeline already, and I've over the past couple of days, I've highlighted some things that have been coming up that are like super mission critical to people, like AI and the data validation from that AI. Uh, so it's this stuff is happening right now, and just that's been my whole mission from the very beginning, since I first learned about this technology. For people to just be aware, because there's going to be a time, and I think it's going to be pretty soon. I think 2025 is when things are going to get real, and it's going to happen pretty quick because they've already laid the foundation. And all systems are a go. Everything is a check. Um, I can see if I can bring up that message from Telegram. I mean, like in August, they were flown out at the request of the Undersecretary of Defense. I mean, like, I don't know what clearer of a message people need than stuff like that. Diggles has been up to DC this year multiple times, talking about stuff like GPS, the FAA, and I mean they are so deeply involved and deeply ingrained in almost everything. It's not even funny, and there is something to be said that for the fact that they are the number one data focused blockchain being used by the Department of Defense. Like, full stop. Like, Charles Hodgkinson can say all the fuck he wants, but he doesn't have that because that's not where he's been focused at, right? They're also receiving the top 1% of all federal funding for blockchain applications. Like, full stop. Like, you can't, that's not something that you can argue. And that's exactly how they got people like Common Crawl, Microsoft, IBM, Panasonic. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All you have to, if you want to get like a glimpse into this, tokenization of trillions and trillions of dollars, all you have to do is look at the National DigiFoundry and see who's there. Like, see who the key players of the National DigiFoundry are. Or look at the Global Blockchain Association and look at the key players. Or
Yeah,
look at
it's an arms race, but I do think that Dag already won, man.
dude.
Like, it's
Yeah.
just the way it goes. And to touch on, the most funded, like, yeah, it is because it works, because they have proven solutions. They've already created these things that are tested. Like, the rest of these chains are focused on pumping meme tokens and, their next NFT marketplaces, which is a nice addition, I guess, to DLT, although not the intended nature for a technology like this. Constellation focused on the true application of what this was supposed to be. They're America's blockchain. Whether or not people get it yet, it doesn't matter. They are America's blockchain, and they ensure that, we do have that cure for communism, that we do have government oversight, that the rest of these organizations, that remain after Doge is done with their cleansing, whatever they decide to do, are, looked after in terms of their spending, in terms of, their governance. And there's a lot of cool things that we can do with voting, and they already have a whole voting mechanism for this. Like, there's a lot of things that DAG has done, Constellation has done, that these other chains just haven't really been focused on, and their architecture is entirely wrong. Like, they're going to be used, they're going to do well, they're going to get enterprise contracts, but when it comes to securing your data and what is actually important to be protected on the internet, it's going to have to be validated and assured by Constellation. HGTP is very important, and it's going to dominate most, if not all, of this industry.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing with the Department of Government Efficiency, like it's laughable to me, right? Because Doge is not going to secure shit. I mean, that's just not the way that network is built. I mean, so I've heard Elon talk about like Doge and why he likes it. And I actually agree and share some of those sentiments. Like I do agree with him, and he just said this just recently with on the Lex Friedman podcast. He thinks that Doge is a superior payment platform to Bitcoin. And I totally agree with him on that. I mean, like Bitcoin is just not really meant for like payments. It's a great store of value, but as far as using it like as a medium of exchange on a massive scale, it's just not it's just not built for that. But then when you want to talk about, like the stuff that he's talking about doing with the Department of Government Efficiency and like auditing and validating, all these different, networks and entities in real time, or even, I think he even said like, Doge could be used for, you know, uh, on-chain voting or whatever. I mean, that's preposterous. I mean, there's no way that that platform would ever be used for uh, like blockchain-based voting app. I mean,
It's a meme coin, bro. It's a meme coin. It's not. We're not going to use it for the government. Come on.
yeah, yeah. It's just not going to happen. Um, let me Yeah, and so I mean that's some of the stuff that you guys are working on. Hold on, I'll go back to this screen share here. With this tokenizing of like traditional and financial assets. Like, maybe Court, maybe you can explain because you've talked about this before, but I think it was hard for people to grasp and comprehend. Um, like how you would tokenize the dollar in a sense where it was just like the dollar on chain and it wasn't really like tokenized in the same way that USDT is tokenized.
Yeah. So they're a private corporation. I mean, Tether and the rest of them. They can go and get partnered with all these banks, and that data is not validated in terms of the bonds that are backed. And after they print on these networks, there's a tremendous amount of volume influx. Meme coins thrive, but there's not always, proof that they're backed. And it's been proven there's been a lot of crazy laundering and corruption involved, and when you get down to it, we do need to like maybe step away from having anyone control the dollar and just have a protocol be able to do that directly from the Treasury. So back in the day, we had a system to where you could come to the Treasury, and if you were going to actually inject gold into the system, you would go to the Treasury and you would give them a gold bar or a couple pieces of gold, coins, nuggets that you found, um, so that you didn't have an influx into the system. They would give you a year's rate on that. So from that, the Treasury accepts the gold, handles the introduction of it to the market system. And this has a relation to what we're doing with the tokenization of all these assets, because the entire idea would be able to tokenize the dollar, but then create other different types of financial assets, stores of value that could come maybe directly from the Treasury, right? The tokenization engine would provide a way to actually validate that the backing of these assets was there, but provide the sovereignty of ownership that people would expect from self-custody, as opposed to, some brokerage or financial advisory firm holding your stuff on behalf of you. And it does sound crazy, right? Being able to transition, but all the banks are actually upgrading their messaging standard, ISO 222, which means that you can ask for a transfer out of that bank, but you can also create a way for that to be accepted by a repository. And it has to be controlled by a protocol. There's a lot of compliance and auditing involved, some security and cybersecurity. There's a lot to be considered, but the prototype and the demo basically are to show that if we were able to do this, especially using Constellation Network, and it can be done, and it has been done. This tokenization of this stuff makes it very easy for everyone to engage with the markets when they want to, but not actually have to go out of their way to get custody. Because right now, if you want to get custody of, let's say, a security, you have to go and file to get the physical paperwork of that stock, and then they have to send it to you. And then you hold it, and if there's a fire, it burns, and then it's gone, right? Unless it's in a firebox or something. But this would provide a digital way to, have tokenized assets using the messaging standard that the banks and these brokerages are going to be using in a way that would allow for that. So it does cut out some middlemen in certain transaction types, but it does provide a lot more security for our infrastructure, and it still maintains the same type of market interactions that we're expecting, although we wouldn't, expect too many folks to, keep their stuff in a brokerage or whatever after that point, except for, let's say, high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals. But it does make sense in a lot of individual circumstances to want to do it this way. And currently there is not that option. So providing that, and then providing the tokenization engine even for the banks and other places to do this in a unified manner is also something that we feel is very important.
Yeah, and standards are super important, and the fact that DAG and Constellation are out there trying to implement standards for everybody's safety, right? Because that's what it's all about. You don't want to get wrecked on some scam meme token. And so I did find a way to pull up the Telegram, and here where Diggles himself was talking about Platform One. And I brought up, so this is back in July of this year, July 19th. It actually goes further back than this, but the reason why I want to bring up this specific quote here, because it has a time frame. So he says Q1 of 2025. So this is back in July, and he said today that everything is done. It's a done deal, and the next step is being fully integrated with Platform One. But so he says here, and this is why being in Platform One is so important and a huge focus right now. We are working through all of these things to get all of this going, and they're rapidly testing and the deployment. But here is the part that I want everybody to understand, just how important this is, how mission critical Constellation's network is for like national security and like on a federal level. So he says that it costs around $250,000 to get into Platform One. But the good news, the DoD is committed to paying our fee due to our importance.
That's crazy.
Like full stop there. So you have the Department of Defense weighing the fee so these guys can get on the platform and up and running and implemented due to the importance. I mean, it doesn't get any more real than that. And once these standards are set in place, that opens up the door to the things that like Court was talking about, this tokenization on a grand scale, right? It's gonna open up the door here. Going back to this thing right here, going over the trillions of dollars that are just waiting. I mean, you had all those people this year, BlackRock, uh, and whoever else, that was just talking about everything is going to be tokenized. Yeah, everything is going to be tokenized. I a million percent agree with all these people. All of this stuff is going to be tokenized, but guess what? It's probably not going to be tokenized on your network. You know why? Because most of these networks that are like talking about stuff just don't meet the requirements for scalability. But the number one reason, and I've pointed this out before on X, it comes down it comes down to trust. And if you look at all the networks that are out there, the amount of networks that are trusted to handle any of this kind of stuff by the federal government, you can probably count it on one hand. And out of all of those trusted networks, IBM is one of them. I mean, you need IBM in your system. I mean, IBM is In Simba Chain is another one, but there's only one network that also has a public solution, and that's just a fact. Like that's not even debatable out of all these networks. So, you know, I mean, it's going to be a rude next year. I think it's 2025. I think is going to be a rude awakening for a lot of people that aren't paying attention and just kind of keep ignoring the hypergraph. What was it like a couple of days ago when I highlighted that VC, the venture capitalist from Atlanta, and how he foresees everything going forward, and he thinks that for the first time ever, you're going to have fundamentals that are going to outpace technicals, and I 100% agree with him. And you can already see this taking shape if you're paying attention. But most people aren't paying attention because most people are getting distracted by the fucking meme tokens. And, that's all you see online because that's all people, that's all the engagement that happens. And, everybody hears about the success stories, but, it's few and far in between, and most of those people are insiders anyway. 99% of these people are getting fucking destroyed, and all it is money laundering. And like the things that court is involved with, these people are tracking all of that stuff. I mean, we've talked about Ivan many, 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 many times, and you'd have to be a complete idiot to keep doing this nefarious stuff because they know exactly who you are. I mean, they've known who you are since you created that wallet on that network because they're keeping an eye on that network because that network is full of fucking scammers. So, you know,
I mean, that's the way it goes, right? Blockchain is immutable, and distributed ledger technology is, not so anonymous because it uses the internet. So, it is what it is. And the folks that have been being bad, they're going to get got, so to speak. But I think that's a good thing. These networks need to be cleaned up. The technology is inherently valuable. Some of these are actually great networks. Some of them not so much at all, anyways. But Constellation has done it right, and market cap is not necessarily an indicator of future success, like you were talking about. during recessions, depressions, and even during big market booms, historically, at least in the stock market, value and fundamentals have proven to be, a much bigger deal than you would think, um, and they actually outperform growth by quite a large margin. So speculation, is nice, but at the end, value and fundamentals, in my opinion, especially when you're providing a service or public good, is definitely a much better bet, just in terms of like who's going to be around for longevity. And that's what I did for a lot of my clients. Like it's different for different people, right? But in terms of historic record, value fundamentals, they outperform by and large, and they destroy growth. And I see Daddy, hey guys, not long before Elon and his new Doge department is made aware of Constellation. I probably not that long. If they don't already know, it won't be that long.
Yeah, and so like I'm going to bring up here Iron Spider, which I've shared this infographic like a lot of times. Most people scroll by it, it's fine, whatever. But so you get like Exceed, right? So this is an approved federal-based identity management solution. So when you look at things like here, I've talked about this before. There is going to be fairly soon, like a nationwide, like proof of identity verification. I mean, that's just going to happen. I mean, so most of the people that are talking about it and focused about it right now, it deals with voting and voter ID, but it goes way beyond that. It goes, this is like a national security thing. You want to know if people are terrorists coming into your country. You want to know if people are involved with human smuggling and whatnot. This stuff is going to probably be implemented and mandated, at TSA, like getting on airplanes. I mean, you're not going to have a choice in the matter. But
Yeah.
you need, go ahead.
Oh well, I was just gonna say, it's important for our country, to implement some of these things. Our borders too loose. I mean, even in terms of like buying a gun, like scan their face real quick, make sure they're not a mental patient. It's much more efficient. You go to the DMV, they can scan you. It makes it to where if you have central databases that are actually relying upon the new types of technology and validated by trustworthy sources like Constellation, it makes it easier for us to interact with some of these services that are essential, that we're definitely going to have and not replace, and just like get a better day, right? It just makes everything better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and hold on, I'm going to bring up another thing here, going back to that infographic, because a lot of people just, sleep on forward edge AI. So here's this, Cassie D stuff, right? That was talked about um, at high def, and so it's this whole way of model carding and implementing artificial intelligence safely. But this stuff is going to be implemented like on a federal level. So let me get to this spot here where he talks about just how important this is.
Or software industry simulation engineers are also defense or software industry simulation engineers are also harmed. These professionals need to verify intellectual property and copyright clearances, which is a crucial step in virtual reality and augmented reality simulation balance testing. Cassie D combines AI model cards, watermarking, and blockchain verification to provide model visualization and an ability to track the pedigree and provenance of AI models and the data used to train them. When implemented properly, this unique pedigree tracking tool gives the end user assurance that an embedded AI model meets organizational usage policies, use case applicability requirements, and intellectual property governance laws. Compliance can be confirmed by verifying the integrity of recorded changes to the AI model, various sets of data used to train the model, and the applicability of the operational use case. The availability of multiple watermark technology options.
Yeah. So, but basically, what he's saying here is, this will be a way for you to prove that your model is secure and validated and hasn't been tampered. And it's also a way to prevent something like what happened the other day with Google, where their AI literally told somebody to kill themselves. Like, and it's sort of laughable that people put blind trust into these AI models, Chat GPT, even Grok, right? They're just blindly thinking that whatever you ask it, like that's the actual true and correct answer.
Exactly. AI is only as good as the data that it is trained on. And these machine learning environments, these artificial intelligence environments, and the models that are used to train them are very, very susceptible to improper data importation, right? And so if you give it, a corrupted data set, you could end up with things you are not expecting. Now, mass data is very important. The more data you give it, the better. But it does have to be conditioned in a way and then validated such that you know what you're getting every time and you're only getting what you want. Because sometimes, like you're saying, like that should never happen. But then if you go and look, if we start to create agents that are actually, protecting certain things because they're faster than people in, let's say, national security instances, we're going to have to make sure that some of these agents, are properly trained with data that we know is actually pure. And that's a very important, standard that has to be set in a national way. And that will bleed through to our allies, in terms of, military alliances and so on and so forth. And that does trickle down to financial systems because of the way that we do have to interact in between those, right? Because they're kind of married. And so when we also consider that if you don't do this, some of these agents could be hacked, or what you were talking about could be hacked, like even simple things, you can't rely on that data or the outputs of these agents unless, it's actually been validated in terms of their data set by something like Constellation, which is exactly what they're doing with Common Crawl, which is why they're doing it.
Yep. Yeah, and it also prevents, hallucinations, which everybody is aware of with Chat GPT, even Grok and Google, right? And there's also a reason why, so like AI, this isn't new. The Department of Defense has been mucking around with artificial intelligence for decades. They've been using artificial intelligence for targeting stuff like for decades. Just look at Palantir. I mean, that's like, like, so there is like good, artificial intelligence systems, but they're good for a reason, because they're sort of like black boxed in a way, in a controlled environment. But when you want to get this stuff out into the wild for the masses to do the things that are undoubtedly like going to transform humanity for the better, and lots of applications. I mean, just think about like healthcare, all the applications that AI and all these agents could be used in healthcare, education. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But you need to be able to trust this system, especially if it's going to be handled in an autonomous way. When these things are just let loose, and you give them a task, you need to be able to trust that this agent doesn't get, mucked around with, and his mission remains clear. And while he does have some autonomy to be able to, like, uh, freewheel it a little bit, you want to be able to trust when he comes back to you and hands you, uh, whatever it is that you asked him to do, that this information that he's giving you is trusted. And as we can see, yeah.
And if those are autonomous operations, I mean, imagine, the amount of mistakes that could be made inside of an autonomous operation using uncontrolled data sets with improper outputs that hallucinate over time, right? Those type of agents could never be relied upon because at a certain point they're going to hallucinate. And so having this type of validation is mission critical, even inside of enterprise, if they want to start using some of the efficiencies that AI provides while keeping it controlled. Because if we start trying to implement AI in all sorts of other ways, but we don't use technology like Constellation specifically, I mean, we're going to end up running into all sorts of problems down the road. I mean, imagine if FINRA and HIPAA went and started, using AI to do all sorts of autonomous actions, but they weren't going to be using something like Constellation in order to validate data that was provided to those agents. You would end up with all sorts of errors and improper action based on data that was provided to those agents that may or may not be truly historical. Maybe it hasn't been watermarked, so it has no idea whether or not it's accurate. That the accuracy of that information, as well as that batch data importation and the validation of that, is very important for national security, because otherwise people can attack our financial systems just by providing AI with improper data in mass using bot networks. And so this is a way to kind of protect from that and trim away some of that fat that exists inside of the data lakes that are training some of these AIs at the moment.
Yeah, and it's going to be, it's going to get to a point where it's going to be impossible or nearly impossible to detect any of this stuff. This is why you need some sort of, system that can validate the integrity of all that stuff. I mean, there's plenty of news sources and stories out there where people have gotten these AI stuff to trick people into doing things. And somebody, I think I posted a story a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was like a month ago, where somebody used Copilot. So that's the AI that's part of Microsoft. So Microsoft was in like this rush to get AI on all of their products, but in doing so, there wasn't like real good safety measures. And so this guy tricked Copilot into getting and giving him access into systems that he shouldn't have access to.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. And tokenized access using things like Constellation, I mean, that is what is going to provide that layer of extra security. Just because it is resistant to a lot of things. And, even if they decided to do that, you just provide that extra layer in terms of access. Maybe it's a wallet, maybe it's a proxy wallet connection. You still need to be able to connect that in a way. And wait, we have Casey Hyde. Everyone using an iPhone that predicts the next word is using training and helping a centralized AI, but with Constellation, it's decentralized. That is a good point, Casey Hyde. That is a great point indeed. But yes, it's very important for these models to an extent to be trained that train these agents, because, like you said, these outputs, they can't be trusted. Even people that use AI, like, you better go through and make sure that everything the AI gave you is right, because at a certain point, there's like a data restriction, and there's a nice little area where a lot of these agents do well. But after they get past that data threshold, they start to have terrible problems. And some of it has to do with them just conjecturing upon data that is available, but not necessarily relevant, not historical, not accurate. And it provides a lot of outputs, currently, even some of these just like normal chat models that just aren't real. And so you have to be very careful. And it would take away a lot of the user error or the user challenges from these models, but it would also protect agencies that rely on these models in a way that currently doesn't exist. And that's very important in terms of national security and the long term. Yes, you're right, Daddy. Guys, Mr. Diggles would be a great choice for a member of Trump's new crypto advisory body. Yes, Diggles delivers.
Yeah.
It would be an amazing choice for Trump's new crypto advisory body.
Yeah, Diggles would be an amazing choice for the transition team. We got another question here. Decentralization is important. It gives us power, and I mean, it's absolutely important. And so that's the other thing that I kind of want to emphasize too. I got on this space a couple of weeks ago where I was talking about this stuff with people, and they hear this involvement with the federal government, and they're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" We don't need centralized stuff. But the one thing from the very get-go that has been very clear from the government is they want a decentralized network. And they're, from a security standpoint alone, decentralization is greater than a centralized system. But some of these networks, and maybe like you can expand on this, Court, especially from like a financial aspect, but even like from a government aspect, there's some networks, and this is the advantage again of Constellation's flexibility, is these metagraphs are all different layer one networks. So you can build your network however you want. If you wanted to build a centralized network, you could. If you wanted to build a permissioned network, you could. And there's some advantages of a permissioned network, because in some instances, you don't want just any Joe Blow accessing your network. Case in point, this whole blockchain voting thing. You don't want somebody from, fucking China submitting a vote for the election. They have no business voting in our elections, right? And you can even go down on a micro level, like somebody that's running for election for a city council, right? You don't want somebody voting for the city of Austin, Texas city council. You don't want somebody that lives in New York voting. The people in New York have no business whatsoever voting on the city council member. You just want the people that are registered voters within the city of Austin, Texas, to participate in that. And so in that aspect, permissioned networks have value. Even on an enterprise level, I could see where certain enterprises might want a permissioned versus a permissionless network. But this is, again, Constellation's flexibility. It's, you are free to do and build whatever, however you want.
Exactly, man. And it's all about that kind of just base model of validation. It's to be trusted. This is a network that allows for you to create these digital identities in a manner that is, if you want, chain agnostic through Intrana, wink, wink, But if you really want to get down to it, like Constellation, like that's what we're going to recommend. It's horizontally scalable in an infinite way, and it allows us to, for very important things like you're saying, voting, to provide that feeless infrastructure for people to go register, make sure it's secure, and then ensure that we have true results and validate that data. There's nothing better than an example than, let's say, voting for the use of Constellation. There's so many things that they do well, but that in and of itself, there wouldn't be an argument anymore between any parties, regardless of what the situation was, about what the outcome of the vote was based on the registered voters, the United States citizens that are able to go there and vote. And it's not that big of a deal if we make the technology accessible. If there's no paywall, if it just is a service to the country, of course, we should absolutely use something like that. And it makes a lot of sense to use Constellation because that infrastructure already exists. We can immediately spin that up and then let people go and vote in these ways that allows for us to know that, like you said, China or Russia or some decentralized, criminal syndicate that is trying to control some infrastructure based on some billionaire giving them money, right? So that they can enact, better laws for their corporate syndicate so that they can make more money. It allows us to put kind of a tamper on some of the main sins that have existed inside of our infrastructures, like government or capitalism, for far too long. Corruption and greed, and some of these things that lead to terrible collapses, like bailouts. It allows us to, on every single imaginable instance, make sure that the results and the actions of the participants are validated, such that there's accountability, and it ensures that there's efficiency from that, because we can catch things earlier, so that we don't find out 8 years later that they created a bunch of stacked bonds and loans that weren't necessarily AAA rated, but were given huge ratings, which led to the housing crisis, right? It was a complete corruption back in 2008, which is what led to the entire, wasn't collapse, but repression of our entire economic infrastructure. And all of that can be put to a halt immediately using technology like this, using Constellation specifically. And it's very important that we do so quickly, because it's more important and more valuable and more efficient. They will dominate our markets if we let them. But we could even use Constellation to limit AI's activity within markets, such that normal individuals and participants still stand a chance.
No, you're 1,000% right. Here I pulled up this little side by side that I made, because everybody went crazy with that report that came out, and it was funny that the report came out like I think it was a day before the Global Blockchain Association thing that the National DigiFoundry, is involved with, and who's involved with the National DigiFoundry, the United States Treasury Department, and they were talking about utilizing blockchain for tokenized treasuries and like what it was going to take. And so everybody went crazy, right? But it's funny that 99% of the people that went crazy talking about their favorite network, well, I'm sorry, but your favorite network isn't a trusted network. Not only that, but your favorite network doesn't meet all of the specific requirements that they talked about. I mean, the Treasury Department specifically talked about how proof of work is not an acceptable consensus mechanism. It even talked about proof of stake and how proof of stake is not an acceptable consensus mechanism. So that basically rules out Bitcoin, Ethereum, and even Solana, right? So like, who are you left with, right? And it gets pretty thin And Intrana is involved with this. I'm going back to their website. So this talks about the financial product tokenization working group within the National DigiFoundry. And can you tell us more about how far in cycle 1 are you guys?
So we do have the prototype ready. I wasn't able to attend up at the Whitmore House, unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, flights, some errors with the apps. It was our fault, right? But from that, there are going to be other meetings that we go and present the demo at, and some other things that the NDF is doing that are very important in terms of standards nationally and internationally. So what the work group itself is focused on is being able to tokenize anything that the traditional financial infrastructure is used to having. To a certain extent, tokenization is used in a way inside of our infrastructure now. It just isn't used in this way. It's not used on these networks. And the best way to describe it is, having a token direct from, the person who has issued the stock, as opposed to some broker or, etc. Because when you look at it, everything is expressed via data. Brokerages hold your assets. They express that inside of quote unquote secure databases, and that is your data. They then go and retrieve that data and tell you how much you own and allow you to engage in the market. But it is all ones and zeros in their databases, their data lakes. And those lakes are rather secure to a certain extent. But as we've seen with, let's say, China being able to achieve multiple qubits without quantum computing infrastructure using traditional infrastructure, so just chip-based, just normal chip-based compute, it does present the challenge of us needing quantum computing resistant databases sooner rather than later. Actually, in my opinion, immediately. Tomorrow would have been better. The day before would have been better, etc. It's very important for our infrastructure to receive this blanket of protection as soon as possible. So our work group is focusing and has created a prototype that allows for us to go and tokenize assets based on ISO 222 and other traditional data schemas that the banks use to receive that data and provide sovereignty and self-ownership of those assets, such that
including stocks, bonds, real estates, and commodities.
Stocks, bonds, real estate, commodities, digital bills of ladings, letters of credit, letters of intent. We even have an experimental thing for agriculture. Anything that can be expressed digitally in terms of your ownership, we felt it was proper for us to express that in a quantum computing resistant, self-sovereign way. And this is our opportunity to combat communism with technology. There's no way for you in this instance to get debanked. There's no way in this instance for you to go and have your assets stripped because, your state all of a sudden says, we need your farm, and that's a very important thing for us in Texas, is making sure that, what we own remains ours and it can't be taken from us as long as we follow the law. And that's something that this technology, this prototype allows. And it's a very important step, in our opinion, in our nation's future, being able to own our assets, engage with markets, engage with banks, engage with traditional liquidity systems in an easy and seamless manner, but also not depend on someone to tell me what I own. Because I can label not on two hands the amount of instances where there have been people that I know myself, where I've gone to my banking app and it couldn't tell me what I had in there, or I couldn't access it because something happened. Their database went down. And that affects millions of people, tens of millions of people constantly. and it might not be in America, but if you use this model everywhere, it allows for you to immediately access in a decentralized manner your assets, prove that you own them, and then engage with these markets that are also required now to use these messaging standards such that you don't have to rely on somebody telling you. You just know because it is provided by so many databases and validated by so many databases based on the way that Constellation is set up and their decentralized infrastructure. It is permissioned, but it's decentralized. So it takes the best of both worlds. And like you're mentioning, having a centralized system for very certain things, like nobody needs to know what is in your bank account, what you spent at the gas station or at the stock market today. Nobody needs to know your personal details, right? And there's no mine. And it makes it a lot easier in centralized systems to provide that decentralized security, which is what everybody believes in. But also allow kind of thresholds for that security to make sure that while privacy is enabled, we don't have a lot of people that are accessing the network that shouldn't, because there are a lot of bad actors, and there's a lot of people out there that, like you said, are involved in human trafficking or drug dealing or money laundering or involved with criminal syndicates, and it's becoming a bigger issue. And are sponsored by foreign nation states that are not necessarily friendly towards the United States. And it's definitely a cyber warfare-esque type environment, but Constellation allows for you to put up those barriers so that your country, so that your state or your municipality, your corporation, your company, your mom and pop business doesn't get attacked by all of these hackers that are out there to drain value and then distribute it amongst their meme coin networks, which is what is happening now.
Right. And, to get back onto this thing that, the government only wants centralized systems and full control. So I'm going to, again, highlight something. So this is the Financial Product Tokenization Working Group, right, that the U.S. Treasury is in. This is not a Bitcoin address. This is not an Ethereum address. This is not a Solana address, but this is a DAG address. This is a Constellation DAG address, right? And so, it's important to emphasize that and to make it crystal clear which network is being used for this stuff. So this is the working group charter. This is the research, what he was just talking about, the cycle 1. The court let us know that the tokenization engine is finished. But if you go down here and you look at some of the things, this is like really important for people to realize that these are the things that they're working on. These are the things that they're envisioning happening. And one of them, look here, a decentralized exchange platform. So a DEX. So they're talking about a DEX powered by a DAO. So the DAO can operate a decentralized exchange platform where tokenized assets can be traded peer-to-peer without the need for intermediaries. So like DEXs, like federally approved DEXs are happening. And how many networks out there, like for real, I want somebody to tell me, how many blockchain networks are in existence right now that are going to have a DEX that's also a federally approved network? I can think of one, and the other thing which you were talking about too is AI. I mean, AI is all over this stuff. They're testing. They're talking about how algorithms can be used, and it's super important. I mean, when you talk about like algorithmic trading, and people that want better informed decisions, because these AI powered tools are extremely powerful. I mean, it is just a fact that these AI powered analytics will outtrade any trader. I mean, it's not even a question, because they have access to all the data in real time. but you need to be able to trust the data, right? You need to be able to know that your AI hasn't been spoofed or hacked or is doing something nefarious. Um, Also, here they're talking about automated compliance and regulatory reporting. So, I think here this has to do with like nefarious actors or people trying to cheat stuff. Um, Kevin
Exactly.
Jackson, yeah, Kevin Jackson talked about how the IRS is involved, and yeah, everybody hates the IRS, but there's a lot of businesses out there, that you know try to cheat their taxes,
They
right?
do,
And
but
so this,
imagine also if the IRS could just send you a message in your wallet that said you owe this much in taxes because it knows because it's an AI. So there's no
Yeah.
more like guessing game, like talking to an accountant and needing to know how much exactly you own. If everything, including your stock purchases, your commodity purchases, real estate, your actual US dollar is all on chain, it can just be tracked and you can just be sent a bill or you can be sent a refund. Like the entire IRS model can be redone. And I actually spoke about this in DC to one of the guys from the IRS. And they very much liked that. They were like, wow, that is incredible. No way you can do that. It's like, yeah, of course, Constellation. Like they provide the environment to be able to do this. And we kind of went down the rabbit hole of, okay, well, what would the limit be? And it's like, well, the limit is, taking the money out of people's accounts. That's where we're not going to allow you to do it, and the encryption won't allow you to do it. But what it will allow you to do is tell them exactly what they own. And that provides like a very, very sovereign way, a free way, a much more fair way to tax an entire populace, including corporations and individuals and government employees, in a way that just says, hey, this is what happened. And you don't have to go through a million pieces of paperwork because it's all on chain. And as long as the AI is validated, like something by Constellation, which they are doing, you can make sure that you get proper results. And so, what we envision is going to your Stargazer, connecting to Intrana, like going to like a Constellation specific link, and being able to engage with all of these different environments in a peer-to-peer manner. Because yes, like the stock market matters, and there's a lot of things that are very important. Ownership of companies, especially as an individual, like that's a very important part of being an American. I bet on this company. I bought this stock. I want to receive dividends or whatever their profit sharing agreement is. I want to own these type of shares. They could be Class A or private shares. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
That type of interaction doesn't need to go away. That's what made America great. That's what led us to the golden age of building skyscrapers and really like connecting the country with highways and roadways and railways. Like it was an important step. But this is also a very important step, because if we can ensure that you only give your assets in a manner that is like absolutely necessary away from your custody, that provides a level of security on a national security standpoint that is absolutely paramount. And we're realizing it now. Back in the day, it wasn't that important because we had cybersecurity down and nobody could touch us. But what we're realizing is that on the World Wide Web, some of these libraries, some of the ways that we express data are less secure than we would prefer. And some of the things that look very pretty in terms of user interface are also rather vulnerable. And we're starting to see a lot of data get leaked. We just saw the social security numbers of every American get leaked. There's a way to transition to a new number in an automated manner based on Constellation Networks technology that would provide new numbers for everybody in a decentralized manner that would allow for everyone to engage with everything that they need in a way that wouldn't require you to wait at the DMV for 2 hours, right? Because you'd be able to use all of these infrastructure components that have been built, some of these modules that have been built that the government's already using, that have already been tested. Like you said, they're battle tested. And it's important for people to realize eventually, and they will, and hopefully sooner rather than later, that Constellation is the linchpin there. Like, they are the key component that makes everything work, even for Intrana. Without Constellation, Intrana doesn't work because of the way that this all kind of integrates, validates, and scales. The scaling nature is the most important part, besides the way that the data is protected. And that directed acyclic graphing, DAG, that is much more important than people realize. A lot, things that have been broken recently, they're not DAGs, and that's being proven over and over again. There's a lot more qubits, there's a lot more compute required to break something like a DAG architecture than, I believe that RSA and some other things just got broken. That requires entire foundational shifts.
And especially when you're looking at like the modeling and AI, right? Because all graph-based things, that do with AI, I mean, that's just what they follow. So, to piggyback on your point, Forward Edge AI, in that video, I mean, I stopped it ahead of time, but they talk here specifically. We can play this little clip where it talks about that, right? It talks about blockchain, but then he goes in specifically to say why a directed acyclic graph is the best way to go. So we'll just let this play here for a second.
Blockchain foundation ensures continued and immutable visibility of the model's origin that is used to provide evidence of any model tampering.
Right. So I'm going to pause it there. So everybody understands the value of, blockchain technology and distributed ledger technology, the immutability aspect of it, right? But the problem, especially when you're integrating like stuff with AI solutions, that's where like how your network is built, the architecture of it, the whole infrastructure. If you don't have a good foundational base, depending on what type of application you're wanting to do, it's not ideal to do it on a network that was built for something that it's not built for. And this is what he's going to highlight here.
The use of a direct cyclic graph instead of the traditional linear blockchain structure provides the required scalability and responsiveness, all while using parallel processing to dramatically reduce energy consumption. The blockchain implementation leveraged a universal blockchain toolkit previously created for the US federal government. The focus of the toolkit was to enable secure information sharing of sensitive mission data and communications by using a graph-based blockchain that worked alongside with their existing legacy systems and applications. Cassidy presents the AI model cards, model pedigree, and all related training data in an easy-to-use visualization. This innovation can provide the enhanced adversarial cybersecurity protection posture needed to support on-the-fly learning and autonomous on-orbit updates of deep learning algorithms through the implementation of a strict governance and quality management framework. The technology is dual use, designed to meet the stringent security requirements of government, military, and digital banking organizations. All underlying.
All right. Like, boom. And that goes back to what Court was talking about with the National DigiFoundry and the tokenization engine, right? So, you need like these agents that are able to handle this stuff at scale, and you need to be able to do it in a secure way. And he even talked about there specifically, the banking stuff, which goes into this charter. So it's not just DoD stuff. All the DoD stuff just validates this technology, and you don't get any better validation of your product than in a battle tested contested environment. I mean, you gonna trust like some Joe Blow who just spun up his chain and is looking for early investors, or are you gonna trust somebody that has already tested it in mission critical situations like U.S. Transcom? I've pointed out U.S. Transcom. I mean, they're like the largest logistic uh, anything in the entire military. And I would say that they would rival people like FedEx and whatnot. I mean, the amount of stuff that they move on a day-to-day basis is mind-boggling. When Constellation was working with them in 2019, they were doing something like 2 terabytes of data every 60 seconds. The Civil Reserve Air Fleet is part of CRAF. So the Civil Reserve Air Fleet is a bunch of civilian airlines that bid on contracts. So when you want to swoop in and have like special forces operators go into Ukraine, for example, and you don't want anyone to know about them, you're not going to put them on a C-130 U.S. Air Force transport plane. You're going to put it on like a FedEx plane or something like that. And there's already been stuff in the news where instances where data got compromised, and you had people, like you had press waiting at these locations, so they like knew people were coming. Like, you can see how that would be bad news. And outside of that, like outside of this Department of Defense like area, mission critical data applies to everybody. It doesn't just apply to the DoD, right? I mean, look at all the sensitive data leaks and hacks that have been happening for the past couple of years. I mean, it seems like every single day there is somebody that had a data breach, somebody that was hacked, some sort of ransom, thing. You had the casinos that were hacked. You had lots of hospital systems that were hacked. The list goes on.
Don't get me started. So we just got back from Vegas from the PGF, which was an excellent event. Thank you, Brandon, and everybody associated. It was crazy, right? But we noticed just walking through some of the machines that these casinos use, there's no way they can't be hacked. It's crazy. Like, they must be losing hand over fist on some of these iterations. And it's just something that exists right now. And there's no way that they don't want a solution. They just don't know about Constellation. That's it.
Mhm.
But that is the solution. And if you start to integrate DLT inside of even things like casinos, which is billions and billions of dollars a year, I mean, you start to get a lot more protection for the businesses that are running these operations, and you get a much cleaner operation from that, much more efficient operation from that.
Mhm. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And so it's like, you know, your data is mission critical data, right? And so that is, extremely valuable to people and to businesses. And outside of the common crawls and the Panasonics and the IBMs of the world, right? And Nvidia, Apple, all these people. The other thing that I've pointed out is there's a much larger subset of the population where actually most of the economy comes from. and it's these small to medium-sized businesses. And most of these people are completely oblivious to the fact that there is technology that exists today, right now, that could be implemented right now that could save them financially. And that's why it's super important to get out there and to talk about this stuff. Not just Constellation, right, but just distributed ledger technology in general, because there are application specific things that are ideal for certain situations where some businesses will benefit from this tremendously. One of those companies that I've talked about an awful lot, like Alchemy. I mean, look at them. I mean, they like pretty much have eliminated advertising fraud by using blockchain. And that's a game changer for advertisers and publishers, because currently, Google has a monopoly on that stuff. And there's a walled garden, and nobody knows what's happening with, their ad impressions. But Alchemy, with distributed ledger technology, has pretty much just put all of that stuff on chain. And so they can verify that an ad impression happened. And so it eliminated all of that. And because they're using a decentralized process, they're saving, just untold amounts of money. The average, I think it's something like a traditional advertising exchange is something like 40%, right? So they cut that out because there's no middleman. And it's, they're depending on what your ad spend is, like if it's like a video or just like some basic thing on a website, it's between like 3 and like 5% or something like that, right? So like these
They're
companies
way
are,
more efficient.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just, and the savings is unreal, right? And that's exactly how Alchemy, for example, got people like Coca-Cola, New Balance, Disney, and a bunch of other huge companies.
It is kind of unbelievable that they did that, but also not unexpected. Their technology provides the savings that people are looking for, but also the exposure and targeted direction. That type of marketing is something that is very difficult to find, and Alchemy does a very good job at that. And they do have a relationship to Constellation to a certain extent. The guys at Constellation know the guys at Alchemy. Let's just say that. And it's one of those things that, like you said, it's not just Constellation, although I think they're king, right? Constellation is king. That's just the way it goes. But so many other applications that are built on other chains that provide so much value, that provide protection. And Alchemy is one of those that provides that value. And it provides the protection of results and outcomes, to where when they come back and they say, this is how many people interacted with this is how many people engaged, you actually have, validated data on that. Whereas a lot of their competitors currently, which is why people like Disney and Coca-Cola and New Balance went with them, is because they provide way better analytics, and they also provide better results at a fraction of the price. And that's what this is going to. It's not necessarily monopolistic, but there are going to be winners. And Constellation and Alchemy, and there's quite Door and Trana. There's a lot of companies that are going to, in my opinion, be winners just because of the value that they provide outside of just like what you said, this meme coin cycle. There's a lot of people that are pumping meme coins, and they're definitely laundering money through that bullshit. And it's not something that I'm a fan of. There's guys that I know that have made a lot of money off of it. But it's a casino. It's absolutely gambling. There are no statistics to be provided. There's no fundamental or technical analysis to be applied. It is not something that we can go and look at and be like, oh yeah, this is going to be a winner. It's just, like you mentioned, there are insiders that are being provided information ahead of time. They go and acquire these tokens, and then they gain a tremendous amount of wealth that is then expected to be laundered through these areas, right? Some of them are nightclubs, some of them are strip clubs, some of them are these businesses, but that's the way it goes. And right now we have an opportunity to support the technologies that are providing true application without being involved with all that bullshit, because with all that bullshit comes human trafficking of women and children, comes drug dealing and trafficking of massive amounts of cocaine and heroin that are laced with precursor chemicals that turn into fentanyl. It's an important part of national security for us to understand that a lot of this value transitioned towards Bitcoin and then these other networks that became, decentralized boxes within boxes, proof of authority networks, you know, that are based on Ethereum and other chains, that started to transition a lot of this value that they had held up otherwise inside of these banks that, didn't have any partnerships, that started to associate with, let's say, quote unquote, stable coins that started to print all this value. And once we realized that a lot of this value that quote unquote exists is based on terrible things inside of some of these networks, maybe people will be less inclined to, be tempted by that. Oh, I could make 100 grand on giving these guys 2 grand. Because if you realize that you're just providing $2,000 towards a washing operation, it's going to be cycled towards another meme coin and another meme coin, so they can wash it a couple of times, so they can then offload it towards one of their partner banks that then partnered with one of the stable coins to begin with, so that they could then distribute the bonds. You start to understand how deep this goes. There's compounds full of thousands, tens of thousands of people that are slaves inside of the remnants, the Golden Triangle, that are forced to scam Americans and other first world citizens around the world for their value under the guise of getting jobs. And when they show up and they get these jobs, they're not allowed to leave these compounds, and they're forced to go and, under different types of pig butchering techniques, extract value to the tune of billions, if not tens of billions, maybe 100 billion at this point per year from the American economy alone. That provides it then to distributed criminal syndicates that are operating underneath these networks. There is a fight inside of these distributed ledger technology worlds to make sure that not just the American spirit, but the human spirit still exists. And it's important for us to support these networks that don't support those things, and Constellation is definitely one of those.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, because that's all it's about, is just protecting. And I don't see, a reason why that people have an issue with that. I'm gonna try to address this guy's concern here. America's blockchain needs an American exchange. So while I'm working on something real quick, maybe Court, you can sort of talk about this screen and why, getting on a centralized exchange maybe isn't as important.
So centralized exchanges are important until they're not. Right now, their total utilization is mainly for institutional trading in large quantities prior to public access, which is, the way that the ecosystem goes right now, and actually offboarding of funds, the provision of USD. Once something like, let's say, our tokenization engine of the US dollar and other assets is given support or adopted, on that instance, you would be able to interact with everything without needing a centralized exchange. A decentralized exchange allows the opportunity, like, I know that PacketSwap is coming, for people to engage with other assets using, if, let's say, the US dollar was tokenized in this manner, in a way that we otherwise wouldn't see, because you'd have to go to a centralized exchange and then plug into another third party that would then allow you access to the decentralized networks, if not them using a third party themselves, right? There's a lot of other steps. This just provides a much more efficient manner for individuals to choose the decentralized exchange protocols that exist. Like, a lot of people think that DEXs are a noun, they're actually a verb. A decentralized exchange is a verb, and the protocol that allows that is the decentralized exchange management, asset protocol or whatever. And it ends up being that when you go and engage with this, it is a peer-to-peer nature. The protocol is just the agent that allows that to happen, that is governed most of the time and hopefully by a DAO or a corporation that exists inside of an ecosystem that is, not just fair, but compliant for first world countries in international level. So ideally the United States, especially because it's tax deductible now. And you don't have to pay certain types of taxes for holding American cryptocurrencies, and you can look at that, but they did just make that announcement, which is nice. And from that, you can start to extrapolate, the power of what decentralized exchanges will provide is, if you want liquidity for X, Y, or Z asset, you don't have to go to a third party in order for them to provision that between you and another person. There's going to be designers of those protocols, there's going to be architects of those agents, but it's not going to be in a manner such that you don't know who you're engaging with, and there's somebody that's profiting in an extreme way on the back end just to allow for that interaction to happen in a compliant manner. Our technology has evolved now such that we don't need a tremendous amount of people checking that if we have it on the proper networks like Constellation and using the protocols that are established on networks like that in order for us to make that, happen efficiently, but also compliantly. So this is an important step in traditional financial infrastructure. And I'm looking forward to the future, because it means that after we do all these things, and after all of this is achieved and the mission is achieved to tokenize and allow sovereign custody of these assets, we can start to focus on what, going back to that meeting with the GPA and the NDF, they were talking about, which is the international trade. There's a tremendous amount of new financial assets that can be created based on the efficiencies that are provided by this technology to the traditional infrastructure. And when you start to imagine how quickly some of this can adapt, there's certain types of options that can be created. There's certain types of long-term in between, like European and American options that can be created. And there's a wonderful opportunity for the financial market to generate a tremendous amount of medium to short-term to long-term value with these assets that allow for a much more trustworthy, accessible, and efficient system. That allows for multiple different jurisdictions to engage compliantly without having to worry about, the overlords, LIBOR and SWIFT telling you what to do and paying a tremendous amount of fees for that. And that's something that we look forward to as well, because once we get that global trade actually working in an efficient manner, in a hopefully feeless manner, actually just paid for as a public good, as a global good, then we can start to see, what the true financial markets can provide in terms of efficiencies and proper development and accelerated development in, third world countries, second world countries, and also first world capital markets. And that's something that is going to be crazy to see, because like you said, we have 115 trillion in European, bond activity. So that's potentially capturable by tokenization. And in America, it's a little more, a little less, depending on the year, and that's one asset class. So we're talking, quadrillions in value in terms of volume per year that can potentially be captured on these networks, which is a very valuable thing for us to understand and also support. That's a huge opportunity, and that's something that definitely we are trying to capture, and something that Constellation, I know, is for sure trying to capture.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find the post. So that, again, this is like gonna directly relate to this guy's thing here. but DAG is going to be listed on CoinW like this week. I'm trying to find the post where they were talking about it. And yes, any U.S. investor can access this exchange. So it's a non KYC exchange. And I know that isn't what Court was just talking about, but in the meantime, and the DEX isn't live yet, but I don't know if I want to go through all of the posts here. You're just gonna have to take my word for it. You're just gonna have to take my word for it. It's they made a thing there, like there's like a prize giveaway that's gonna happen. And here, look, this I'm in the US like right now, like this is my account. I don't have a VPN, or anything. Now, when you log in and you create an account, it's going to give you like so for those people in the United States, when you first log in and create your account, it's going to give you like a warning sign. It's just letting you know, because as everybody knows, thanks to fucking Gary, the SEC has this like vendetta in the United States. And so that's all that warning is, basically, is just letting you know that it's not like approved, but you can do it. I mean, here's my account. Like, right here. Like, this isn't, fake news. So I'd recommend anybody that wants, an exchange anyway, to buy DAG, if you're in the United States, to use CoinW. The other way that you can buy DAG is you can actually buy it directly through Stargazer Wallet, or yeah, and you can do it with the partner C14, right? You can use your credit card to buy DAG with C14 right now, and I believe it's feeless, I want to say.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but CoinW, log in, create an account. You can even here's give everyone my referral code right here. You can you can see this for whatever it's worth. I don't know where there's like a QR code. Maybe I'll attach this also on the stream. Well, I'll just take this link, so you can. Here's the referral code. I'll actually link this right now. I'm going to copy this. So I'm going to post this directly to the stream itself that we're doing right now. So everybody can log in and create a CoinW account. But yeah, you can absolutely use this as a US investor. CoinW, sorry, I can only think and post. All right, and post. All right, so there it is. We will. There's the post. It's right underneath. So if you're watching this on X, it's right underneath the stream. So, hey, look, I'm looking at myself. This is kind of trippy. Like, talking about this. Look at that. It's like
No,
the endless.
scroll up. You're gonna get full screen.
Yeah.
Black out. You got to scroll off. It won't work.
Yeah, but there it is. So it's it's right underneath there. So you can just click on this link and create a CoinW account. And I believe it's on the 19th is when trading is gonna go live on the 19th. And so
That's
CoinW,
like almost 1 day from now. It's like 1 day,
yeah.
2 days. That's not bad.
Yeah, no, it's not bad at all. And yeah, I realize that everybody wants like whatever option that isn't currently available, but that's just the way that it is right now. And but like what we pointed out earlier, it doesn't even matter. I don't think. It's going to get to a point where it's sort of irrelevant, right? Because you're going to be able, once the DEX is live, you're going to be able to buy and trade and sell DAG anyway, right? And
Exactly. Like, what if there is no stable coins? You go to a DEX and you can pay this many stable coins for this, whatever the DEX supports. What if every DEX had access to a protocol that allowed them to offer what was available in the jurisdiction that DEX was there for, or the international clients that the DEX was provisioned to provide access to, right? And then from that, what if there was just not stable coins, just a America coin, and it
Yeah.
was the dollar? We don't need all these banks doing again what they did. We just need an American currency that is directly from the Treasury, because that's what accepts the money for America and handles the money for America. And if we have, receipt tokens, whatever you want to call it, it makes it much easier for everything to go about the way that it should be without the chance or risk of corruption, with the added bonus of verification and validation by things like Constellation Network.
Yeah. And here's some of the exchanges that DAG's on for those people that are watching that aren't in the United States. So you got Bitroot, Gate.io, KuCoin, Mexi Exchange, Bitmart, and like I said, CoinW is going to be listing this week, I believe. I believe it's on the 19th. Don't quote me on that. I can't find that post. It's somewhere, on CoinW's account where they talked about it. And there's going to be like a giveaway, whatever, for the first X amount of people that register, or something like that. And as you can see, still KuCoin is the largest exchange by volume. Which is pretty crazy when you think about the fact that as a U.S. investor, it's basically impossible to use this exchange. So this should show you like that there is currently a lot of demand for the token. Now, if it was a lot easier for somebody or everybody in the United States to access the token, I think we would be in a completely different story here. And starting this week, that's what's going to happen, because you'll be able to go to CoinW and buy DAG, like as a U.S. Resident. Like that's going to happen. So CoinW. Like if you want DAG and you're in the United States and you don't want to use C14 or buy it right from the wallet itself, like this is the way to go. This is what I would do, because it's super easy. It takes minutes to set up an account, like minutes, and It doesn't matter that you're in the US. Yes, you will get, like some sort of warning thing, but just click right through it and then you'll get on. I mean, I've got an account that's me. Uh, you know, like, and I'm not using a VPN or anything like that, right? So, yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. We need major American exchanges. Talk to Brian. Talk to Kraken. You know that it amazes me getting back to like the DigiFoundry here. So you got the National DigiFoundry, um, which is like a huge thing, right? I mean, I've talked about this so many times. This, like, everything that everybody is talking about, tokenizing of all kinds of assets. I mean, they're literally in space right now. They've literally sent healthcare records. They've literally done cross-border payments, like all the things that all like the crazy narratives that you see everybody talking about, like, if, when, like, whatever, like, it's happening right now on this network. This is a network. The National DigiFoundry is a network. It's a network that's built on top of Constellation's distributed ledger technology, the hypergraph. Like, this is a fact. And they have a token. And so, doing my weave here, it just is mind-boggling to me why somebody like Brian Armstrong of Coinbase is like deliberately not listing this token.
Oh yeah, that's such a surprise to you. Have you looked at the tokens and projects on Base? Scam, 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 rug pull, scam, scam. Like, get out of here. Like of
Yeah.
course they don't want this. It's gonna dominate.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. It's the way that it goes. Coinbase has no problem listing meme coins as long as they pay them a tremendous amount of money, right? And that's just the way that this ecosystem is now. But very, very, very soon, that's not the way this ecosystem is going to be. Because that's not the way an ecosystem can be if we are going to onboard, like I mentioned, the quadrillions in volume per year from traditional assets. And that's where things like Constellation really come into play. That's what the importance actually is of networks like this. Like it doesn't really rely upon the decentralized networks will have their play, but centralized listings, because the centralized listings are only as good as the liquidity pools that they provide. Right now, they're market makers. They buy tokens low and they sell them high, and they screw the users to a certain extent. And that is their business model. They're inefficient brokerages because, like you mentioned, these are markets that have less than what even like Nvidia has, or Microsoft has, or Apple. And so this is at its infancy in terms of technology, but it's proven itself. But we have a long way to go, and that should give a lot of people a lot of like inspiration, so to speak, because there's not a lot of times where, like, metaphorically, you get to buy Apple when they're still in the garage.
Right.
Like, I mean, we're still in a barn, but I mean, like, Constellation is absolutely not. But that is like, there's just a little past that, in terms of dominance, in terms of liquidity, in terms of network dominance. But they're gonna be there, because that's what the technology dictates. That's what the relationships dictate. There's such thing as mandated technologies there's such thing as, like efficient market players such that they can't be replaced. And Swift was that for a very long time. But there are replacements now. Like Swift is even like working on an ISO 222 experimental prototype just to try to compete with the new market, because they're realizing that we can send data without them having to validate that, because all they were data brokers in the first place. And so it makes it a lot easier for America to, interact with the rest of the world without relying on a third party and just having our own protocols. And with the relationship between the NDF and the GPA, it makes it very easy for us to talk about with the necessary parties what global standards should be, and help set them.
Yeah, and as I'm scrolling through all these, market caps, I mean, this is like trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. Like, I mean, like the global GDP last year was over $100 trillion. Like, that's the kind of stuff that's coming online, and like the fullest expression of this. And it was talked about by one of the founders, was like, one day there's going to be data derivatives like on the NASDAQ powered by the hypergraph. That's probably going to be a thing. Like data exchanges. Tokenized data exchanges, because like, as you were pointing out, like data exchanges and data brokers, like, that stuff already exists, but it doesn't exist fully in the way that it should, because there's no like real interoperability.
Not until 2025. All the banks upgrade to ISO 222, man. That means that there's a lot of interoperability to be had by quite a few different protocols. And they're all going to be able to speak to each other because we're all going to use the same messaging standard. And as long as we use the same type of blockchains, and DAG is absolutely compatible, and so are many other chains, it's going to allow corporations, different businesses, government entities to start to tokenize their data, their interactions, their assets in a way that otherwise was never possible, that also provides a level of security that was unheard of. A lot of these, even government systems that rely on like analog systems, there's no need for that anymore, because we don't need to be able to do that, because these frameworks are so plastic such that we can actually just plug and play better things as they come. That's the beauty of metagraph technology. And it's going to allow for everyone at different levels to compete at a much more efficient and higher level than what they would be used to. And it really will be the golden age of humanity, man. I'm very excited about what this type of technology brings, because it allows us to not rely on, different types of market swings and bubbles, because they won't exist. Because we're going to have agents that'll say, actually, you can write a loan, but it's not for this, because that's not what this is worth. That prevents housing bubbles. That prevents automobiles from being, loaned and financed at crazy rates. Like right now, I think we have like almost 35% for bad interest from some of these lenders and major dealers through their financing tertiary development partners. And it makes it very hard for someone that is trying to beat the system, quote unquote, and come up from a disadvantaged background to actually participate properly. This gets rid of that type of disadvantaged background. This also allows people to participate regardless of access or, location geographically or otherwise. And as long as you're following the law, it allows you to participate where you are. And with some of these agents that would be validated, like things like Constellation Network, it would allow for you to gain access to information that you know could be trusted, that would allow you to participate at a more efficient level. So the human training and the validation of that information provided to the humans is also there, which is very important. You know, we're not going to rely on technology. We're going to use it as a tool, and it's going to help better all of the systems that already exist. We're not going to replace a bunch of people. We're going to give these people that are already trained in our traditional systems these tools that allow them to be more efficient, to help people be more efficient, to create more wealth, to get the futures that they want. And from that, it allows for advisory firms, brokerages to be more efficient, charge less fees, have less data breaches, government entities not to leak all of our social security information, which is just, come on, guys, you know, like that we can do better. We can do better. And we can start with adopting HGTP and Constellation technology. It's a very important step. You know, obviously, you know, I'm going to advocate for Intrana to be looped in there, but DOOR, there's a tremendous amount of application for DOOR inside of enterprise solutions and government solutions, which has already been proven, you know, with the Army and other parties. It's just one of those where the public will catch up, just like with 5G, just like with 4G, just like with 3G, just like with LED and, you know, the rest of the type of displays. You know, the government adopts technology normally 10 years beforehand. And then the public gets it afterwards. With the dissemination and the efficiency of the dissemination of information now, especially through Twitter, StreamYard, other things, Telegram, it makes it a lot easier for people to get the information a little earlier, which allows them to participate at a higher level, which is really cool. Why you mentioned all the exchanges that offer DAC, you know, because it is a little harder to get a hold of, but I think that's going to be worth it in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to be worth it because of all of the different types of data and data sets that are being tested and tokenized right now. So, like, for those of you that are watching the stream that may have missed some of the things that I've posted about. So, this is from last week at the GBA. And this person speaking is actually part of the National Science Foundation. This is the lady that's actually speaking was talking about some of the amazing things that have been done at the National DigiFoundry. And this is Anna Estevez from the National Science Foundation. So where is my screen again here? So I can press play. I've got so many tabs open. It's like, it's a little ridiculous. But you know, it's, you know, I can't emphasize this enough. Right.
Well, you only at the beginning had during the pandemic, there were silos of, well, you only at the beginning had this many patients, you know, of this age, this health condition in a hospital, not sharing data with another hospital. The ability to share those sensitive records across institutions without seeing into the record and to be able to do analytics and AI on top of that. Cross-border during the pandemic, there were silos of, well, you only at the beginning had this many patients.
She goes on and says, you know, talks about cross-border payments.
In the pandemic, there were silos of, well, you only at the beginning had this many patients, you know, of this age, this health condition in a hospital, not sharing data with another hospital. The ability to share those sensitive records across institutions without seeing into the record and to be able to do analytics and AI on top of that. Cross-border payments, you know, increasing the speed of that. the efficiency, which is important both on these high value transactions, but also helping some of the people across the world with the lowest access to financial tools. Transparency in human aid, transparency in environment management and water. These are all real and specific projects. People, and I see some of the entrepreneurs in the audience today who worked on AI and blockchain to enhance scam detection, to protect people from financial abuse. So many amazing things that you all are doing. Show us what is possible, build out the value case, and I think there's going to be a strong receptivity. You've done amazing things, but I think the best is ahead. What are we going to do this year? What are you going to do this year, next year? This is a great decade, depending on what you want to do.
Yeah, and she started off talking about healthcare, right? And so healthcare is something that I've talked an awful a lot about, mainly because that is actually within my wheelhouse of knowledge expertise. I've got about 20 plus years in the healthcare industry, but healthcare data is 7 times more valuable than financial data. And so this is just one subset of that. And so you can just see the growth and the value here. And to give you kind of an idea of who is interested in this and in the seismic shift that's happening, I've talked about this before, but Amazon, yeah, the same people that you buy shit from, they have a clinic. And this actually, they started working on this stuff decades ago because they saw the writing on the wall. They saw this transition. And so they started building out this network to have healthcare. So right now, you can actually go online and put in your data and get your check and stuff like that, your health check, from Amazon. This is a thing. You don't have to go to the doctor. You can actually log in with this Amazon account and do all this stuff. You can see somebody with virtually, they can check you in. They can prescribe medicines. I mean, everything. I mean, it's this is a thing. This is happening. And it's because of just how valuable and how profitable all of this stuff is. And this why, another reason why it's super important that you have a way to protect yourself from this, because as we've seen in the past couple of years with these data breaches and people's healthcare records, getting hacked and getting put out there on the open market and stuff, it's really, really important for people to have a way to protect themselves, to protect their data. And if you want to join these networks like the Amazon thing, I mean, you're free to do so, but you should at least have the assurance that when you join this network, that it's a secure network, that you don't have to worry about sharing your data with Amazon because everything is transparent and they can't do anything with that data without your consent and authorization to do so. And because it's utilizing distributed ledger technology. I mean, there's other ways that you can expand on just the secure information sharing part of it. This is where the whole Web3 component comes in, to where you could actually earn some incentivization by submitting your healthcare data. But that's a totally separate thing and a totally separate value proposition. Just the secure information part of this component of this is like $1 trillion industry. Like if you could set up like an immutable, unhackable, quantum resistant network that you just didn't have to worry about sending healthcare records to and from, you know, these different parties, that is worth like trillions. So, and all of this stuff, getting back again to the you know, to the DigiFoundry stuff, like this is all stuff that's happening like right now. Like all of these use cases right here, like this is an actual use case that's happening right now within the DigiFoundry. This secure information sharing with different universities. You know, she was talking about sharing healthcare records. You know, they're talking about utilities, like actual utilities, like water and electric. Yeah, it's the first time that I actually heard about that, but it kind of makes sense because if you look on Constellation's GitHub repo, let me see if I can
They have models for that.
Yeah, they have models for that. Like literally on Constellation's GitHub repo, they have a model for for like water stuff, like water meter, right? So yeah, I think 2025 is when the rubber's going to meet the road and shit's going to get real. And if you're not paying attention and if you're getting distracted by what's his fucking nuts in this meme coin super cycle, you're going to get absolutely fucking wrecked because the rocket ship is right now it's like doing its pre-flight check, like you know, and this thing is going to blast off and you're going to get wrecked because you're, you know, focused on this meme coin super cycle. And, you know, the only super cycle that's going to happen is in your head because you're going to get destroyed because 99% of these things are fucking scams. I mean, that's just a
Meme
fact.
coins are bad. Okay. They're bad.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's just a fact that 99% of those are scams and you're going to get absolutely like destroyed and you're wasting all your time and energy on things that you're never going to catch. But right now there is an opportunity that's right around the corner and it's
Back up.
yeah, and it's quickly approaching. And you know, it's not just Constellation Network, right? Like I want to emphasize that too. Like they're not the only network that's going to win here. You know, you've got like Avalanche. I've talked an awful lot about Avalanche. Avalanche is another directed acyclic graph network that has modular architecture that's doing some amazing things. Like right now, they've, you know, with the California DMV, you can have your car titles tokenized. They're doing stuff with gaming. You know, gaming in and of itself is like $1 billion industry. So there's tons of opportunities out there. You just got to know where to look. Algorand. Algorand is another amazing blockchain company that's doing some amazing things, and they're involved in a lot of the same people that Constellation is involved with, like the UN. So now Constellation via DigiFoundry and the GBA is doing stuff with the UN. Well, so is Algorand. But as far as tokenizing real world assets, like Algorand has like tons of amazing applications. They're tokenizing real estate. They're tokenizing like airline tickets. You know, I'd pay attention to that because there's supposedly some big partner that they've onboarded. I believe it's some European airline, and you can see, like I think I posted it in a video where you can see the transactions on that network. TravelX just went up exponentially, like in the past month. So it's clear that they've apparently already onboarded whoever that is. And they're also doing stuff with healthcare, like in India. So there's lots of networks out there that are good utility networks that I would attach myself with and look. Um, but you only get one shot this time, because after everything becomes tokenized and everything goes parabolic, and you're sitting there trying to focus on meme coins, you're going to realize that you hedged the wrong bet.
I completely agree. Also, just to mention, Constellation has the coolest sports team, and season 8 of the PGF is going to be tokenized, and that's going to be a very important step. And just all of that, that association with that particular association organization is very important. They're very nice people, but also they represent a tremendous amount of tradition and excellence. And that's something that Constellation absolutely can associate with. And PGF season 7 was a testament to that. Altif, Blake, and I had an excellent time there, meeting all these legends of the sport. And they did a wonderful job at making sure that the athletes had a great time. Brandon, Keelan, Heather, Zoltan, they all just, they went above and beyond in terms of making sure that this production, as well as the entire PGF staff, was a success. And season 8 is going to even be crazier. There's going to be a lot of really cool Constellation involvement. I know that Altif is very excited about season 8, and we couldn't be happier with how that turned out in terms of just the overall value and what the athletes brought. Like, that was a crazy competition. That was a really, really cool thing to see. And the coaches that they got there, Hoyce showed up. We had Hodger. Yeah, Jean-Jacques wasn't able to attend, but I mean, we had all the Machados. Carlos was there. And it was just a very cool thing to see and be associated with. So next time, Dagenham, you definitely have to make it out. Because you're gonna like it, man. It's really cool. And shout out to the PGF. Season 8 is gonna be huge. Everybody make sure you go and check that out. In Toronto, we made their fantasy app. Couple bugs, my fault. I own that. I take extreme ownership of that. That was totally my fault. But it's gonna get better and better and better. And as we evolve, it's going to end up being something that we can analyze data based on metagraph interaction from user and business standpoint, such that it becomes something that provides tremendous value in terms of analytics, as well as, outside tertiary user participation for this organization, for the fantasy app and other things. And that can bleed into all sorts of wonderful combat associated relationships. And shout out to Constellation, Team New Hope. We were on UFC Fight Pass the final day, which was a really cool thing. And it was just a really cool experience. So Dagen, you got to make sure you come out next time.
Yeah. The next one is in March, and I've already talked to Brandon and Altif about it, and I'm pretty sure my calendar is open then. So I'm absolutely going to try to. I'm gonna move heaven and earth to make sure that I can be there. But actually, just watching virtually was a treat for me, because this was my first experience, like many of the people in the Constellation community, watching this jiu-jitsu thing. So like I loved every single part of it. I mean, right from the beginning, with the drafting of the players, like that was pretty exciting. How even that went about. So the whole thing of it was just super exciting. And implementing distributed ledger technology on top of that, with the analytics, is key. And a lot of these teams will have improved performance with enhanced analytics. And to kind of underscore and like emphasize like just how truthful that is, look at, what was it, 2 days ago or yesterday, when UFC has a partnership with IBM Watson that's going to handle analytics. Like, I mean, this stuff is big. And yeah, I will. I'm going to do my best to make it at season 8. I just have to find out when exactly it is. So as soon as the earlier I get that date, the better it is for me, because it's kind of hard for me to schedule time off, especially with that thing being a week long.
Right.
But
It's so worth it. So yeah, like we'll definitely have it early and get the date out and everything. But yeah, PGF is going to take off. It's going to be just like the NFL, the NBA. This is a major sport organization that's going to have different team owners. Like this has the wings to fly. It's a very important organization. And what it represents is not just like the hard work ethic of the athletes and what they've been able to sacrifice, which traditionally they don't make a lot of money for. It represents opportunity for them, but it also represents a way for us to respect the traditions that have been passed down by people who traditionally, had to like work their asses off with no promise of reward. And so it's a really cool way for us to respect that. But also, this is the most dangerous combat sport that exists, and the PGF rule set ensures that it is the most exciting, fast, efficient, good for the viewer, but also like challenges the athlete in a way they haven't been before, and it really leads to a lot of excitement. And so that's on the consumer level. On the enterprise level, we have all sorts of examples from Panasonic to different organizations that they've done that are like semi-government, and then they have their government organizations that they've done contracts with, and they're the most funded on the database DLT company. And
yeah, Panasonic's going to be huge, and it's not just the tough book stuff. The tough book stuff was just like the proof of concept with them and in the DoD, right? And tough Panasonic is really going to open the door for them in a huge way. And I really hope that more and more enterprise people just see the value here, and not only the value, but almost the necessity of wanting and needing to secure your assets, right? And especially with AI, with everybody's integrating AI, and it's all going to come down to proof. You're going to have to be able to trust whatever it is that's in your hand. You have to be able to trust that the data you have is true and accurate and validated. And some of these things, some of these applications, you're not going to have a choice but to use a network that's an approved network. I mean, that's just going to be a fact. You can, screenshot, bookmark, whatever. I'll say it again. There's going to be some applications, especially when it comes to like stuff like healthcare or financial data, like with what you're doing. You're not going to have a choice but to use a network that's a trusted, validated network. Full stop. And so circling back, I think this is a good spot to end, like how we began the video. There was an announcement today that Constellation Network checked all of these boxes, all of these milestones they hit, every single one of these. And Diggles was pointed out in Telegram that they're carrying this over to their current contract with Platform One. And so Platform One is a big deal. And I'm sure that we'll hear more about this maybe in this week, maybe in the next coming months or early next year. I know on Friday, I'm going to be having a space with Benjamin Diggles himself. And, we might talk a little bit about some of this stuff, but, this is exciting. This is big news. This is huge validation. And guess what? Nobody has it but this network. So with that, thanks for joining, everybody. Just leave your comments under the stream, and I'll look at them when I get a chance. And it's a 2025. That's all I'm going to say. All right, everybody.
DAG is America's blockchain.
America's blockchain. All right, everybody. Take it easy.